POCO's back with the F4 GT now. It is a more gaming focused phone compared to say the POCO F3. It's got gaming triggers on it, and that means that you can assign any control that you want to that, and it will then be emulating the touch with it. It's all powered by the Snapdragon 8 Gen 1. My model here, which is a review unit that POCO sent out to me, has 12 gigabytes of RAM and 256 gigabytes of UFS 3.1 storage. Cameras on the rear, we've got a 64 megapixel main camera, 8 megapixel ultra wide, and a 2 megapixel macro. The screen, it's 6.67 inches. It is an AMOLED screen, and it does have a 120 Hz refresh rate. In the cutout, we have a 20 megapixel front-facing camera, and the battery, this one is 4,700 milliamp hours. Included with our phone, we get a 120 watt charger, very quick, around 21 to 26 minutes, it depends, and I'll give you the exact times that I'm getting. And then our cable, slightly different now, it's nice and long, and you notice that it's got this style plug. And that's great that they've used this right angle style plug now. That means it's not going to dig into your hands when you're gaming at the same time and charging. Now we do get a little bit of paperwork here, which is standard, so quick start guide, safety information, and a warranty card. And they do have this, which is a 3.5 millimeter adapter here to Type-C. And a TPU case there with cutouts for our always-on fingerprint reader and those mechanical triggers. When you first handle the F4 GT, you notice that it is a bit of a heavy phone. Now, 6.67 inches, it's not extremely large, but it's not a small phone either. We have Gorilla Glass Victus with our cameras here at the back. So a main 64 megapixel sensor. This one is the IMX686. No optical image stabilization with it at all. 2 megapixel camera for macro. Ouch, that shouldn't really be there. And then an 8 megapixel ultra wide, which is also quite a weak camera. Now, this little logo right here that looks like it's a lightning bolt or something, that's our flash. Now, there is a bit of a light effect that does happen with the lens. There are some colors that come through that. You notice that when you plug it in, for example, it's charging. You see that on the camera module. And there are various different settings, as you can see, for it. So you can keep it on when charging, you can use it for incoming calls, and it's full RGB, so you can go along and customize that color. So it is basically a notification light, which is great. You can see there for the notifications you can set to use it with the game turbo or selected applications there as well. The left of the phone, up the top, you'll find our SIM tray. So it takes 2 nano SIMs, antenna line, volume up and down, and a microphone. So there are 3 mics on this phone. Now, it's a squared off edge around it. It's a metal frame that it does have, and it feels good. It's only about 8.5 millimeters of thickness. Up the top, the mechanical triggers. So they can be hidden away. Normally, you would probably have them hidden away if you're not gaming. So you can simply just swipe that. It's a little switch that then just releases and pushes them up. Now, they've got a little bit of travel to them. They feel good, and they can be assigned to be shortcuts for applications. So you could use this for the camera, for example. So simply just press that. It will launch the camera. We have our always-on fingerprint reader and power button. Now, this is very accurate, and I'll just show you and demonstrate now that when you tap it, it just unlocks straight away. It's very quick, and I really have not had any issues with it. Good location too. It's about where I think most people's thumb would be. Now we do have quad speakers with this phone. So that's actually 2 little speakers right there, side firing. Good position at the top. One of those 3 microphones and an IR transmitter. Our other 2 speakers, microphone for voice calls, and I've placed voice calls. They sound good. There is noise cancellation, of course. And the Type-C port, sadly, USB 2.0 spec. Xiaomi are stuck in their ways forever, it seems, and just don't want to give this video out. So for me, that's a key thing in a gaming phone. I want video out, and I also want a 3.5 millimeter headphone jack, which this lacks. The screen is covered with Gorilla Glass. It has a screen protector on it out of the factory, and they do a perfect job applying it. No dust underneath it, unlike me trying to do it myself would be an absolute mess. And then the camera in the cutout right here, that's 20 megapixels. Very standard there from Xiaomi. Bezels on this 6.67 display aren't too bad. They're certainly not the slimmest, and it is able to display 1.07 billion colors. Maximum brightness, Xiaomi claim to be 800 nits, and I'm measuring 740, just a fraction over that, which is still good. So you can make it out in direct sunlight, and notice that it's banding here on the camera that I'm using to record, but I don't see in person with my eyes any banding, any flicker with this screen. It's very good. So it is using MIUI 13 for POCO, which is a customized version of that for POCO. And I've noticed that the launcher itself has been good. There's occasional little bugs that I'm seeing with animations. Like right now, it should be showing the mountain here in the background clearly, but for some reason, it's permanently blurred. I don't know why that is happening, but it should clear itself up, hopefully. Now, gestures, they are working normally fine. As you see, as I swipe up, we can go into recent apps. And I wanted to point out that the haptics on this particular one, very, very good. We get these nice, strong, crisp little bursts, pulses there for the haptics engine, which is their X-axis linear motor that they've got on this. And to me, it feels like one of the better haptics that I've definitely felt with a phone here from POCO, recent phones from them. So you might have just seen there was a bit of an animation stutter there. The performance of it can sometimes just show those animations not quite being as fluid and smooth as they really should be. Notifications are all working fine, no major bugs, and you can see now the background looks clear before it was blurry. So it's just these small little things that do need to be fixed and corrected. Now, the POCO F4 GT does have a bit of bloatware, which is typical from POCO. They install and pre-install all these kind of apps that you probably have to go through and uninstall quite a few of them. It doesn't take too long, but it's a minor annoyance. The good thing is there are no adverts that I'm seeing with things like the system apps or the cleaner and things like that, which is good because I used to have the adverts on there before. So I am on the latest firmware, and the security update is from February. So it's a little dated now, being the fact that we are in April, of course, at the time of this review. Just to point out that my version, as I mentioned at the start, does have the 12 gigabytes of RAM and then a virtual memory of 3 gigabytes there too. So battery time, I can run PC Mark here. This is a fixed battery life test. The display is configured to 200 nits. It goes from 100% to 20, and it's worked out this time here, which is good for 120 hertz. It's full HD plus resolution, so it doesn't take a huge toll like the QHD displays. Realistically, you're looking about 7 hours of on-screen time, 7.5 with this phone with general kind of use. That is not gaming too, mind you. So charge time, to go from 4% to 100 only took 23 minutes. Other times I have charged, it's been 25 minutes. Sometimes it's been 21. It is very quick, of course, 120 watt charging, and it has a 4,700 milliamp hour battery. We do have a Wi-Fi level 1 cert here, so Netflix will be in full HD, but Amazon Prime Video sadly is not, and a few others like Disney, for example, will be standard definition until they whitelist this device, if that ever happens. Camera 2 API, we have the maximum support here, so level 3. You can use things like Open Camera, Gcam ports, test them out. They will work. You don't need to have root access for that. Internal storage speeds. Now I have the 256 gigabyte version, and you can see that it is very quick, very, very quick here. Look at those random reads, and especially that random write speed there. That's impressive. Really quick there. And then the GPS working well. I can actually get a lock indoors here, and the accuracy will top out at 3 meters, and it does see a huge amount of satellites. The Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 that this has, of course, it's powering it. Now, the Wi-Fi speeds, excellent, super quick, better than most phones, so they're focused on this area, which is great for a gaming phone. You need good connectivity, and even downstairs away from my Wi-Fi 6 router, this is, of course, Wi-Fi 6 speeds here, it still gets over 300 megabits per second, so that's impressive, really good wireless. And the Antutu score, really high here, nearing towards the million point mark there, and it's to be expected from the Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 for short bursts. It is a powerful chip. It does generate a bit of heat. Just with that benchmark, it went up 7.5 degrees, and I lost 5% battery. And finally, the Geekbench score here does show that the Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 is a high performer. Onto the audio. So the F4 GT, I know I've mentioned it a few times, lacks a 3.5mm headphone jack, which I think a gaming phone should definitely have. But it does have, of course, that Type-C adapter that's included. You can use it. Audio quality does sound good. Voice calls sound fine. But how do the 4 speakers in this compare to what we have with the Samsung Galaxy S22 Ultra? Those are AKG tuned ones. So on the left here, that is the POCO F4 GT. I'll start with that one first, and then the Samsung, so we can hear the differences between the two. Oh, that was very close. I think the win there just goes to the Samsung S22 Ultra, but they both have very similar loudness to it. I just think that the AKG tuned speakers that we do have with the S22 Ultra just have a little tiny more bass to them, but very good speakers in that POCO F4 GT. Over to gaming, which you could say is the real focus of the F4 GT. So with PUBG, you can run the extreme frame rate option here, which is 60 frames per second. Unfortunately, we don't get a 90 frames per second option, or 120 would have been great with this developer. Let's have a look at some gameplay. To configure those gaming triggers that are at the top there, you simply swipe up here when in a game. You've got Game Turbo and then the shoulder button option. And that's where you can drag them over to where you'll find, for example, iron sights and to shoot is how I normally set it up. And you can save it, and that saves per game there. So quite easy to do. And it's very easy and quick and faster than I think using the on-screen control. So what those triggers are doing at the top there, the shoulder buttons, is basically just emulating on screen. So when I press that, you can see that is to fire, and that's to look down the iron sights or the scope if I had a scope with this gun at the moment. And it's very fast there, you can see. There's really no delay. It's as fast as touching it there. And of course the touch does have that 480 Hertz sample rate. So it is very quick and responsive. Now the game performance is very good here. It's constantly 60 frames per second. It's not super demanding PUBG. So the Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 is able to handle this with ease, really, and not be pushed that hard. You can even see when you swipe into Game Turbo, you can see there. I'm in the performance mode too, by the way, here, but the GPU is only being pushed 9% and the CPU at 44%, which is nothing at all. So great performance here with PUBG. I'm going to move over now to Genshin Impact, which is one of the more demanding games you can get. The performance overall is very good, and of course if you do want a better, more solid, just 60 frames per second the whole time, then lower the setting preset down, of course, or tweak a few things to be able to get that. So very good performance with such a demanding title like Genshin Impact here. So what I'll do now is I'm going to game for 1 hour, and we'll see just how hot is it actually going to get. Well, that did not work out well at all. I was about the 38-minute mark into gaming with Genshin Impact on the highest possible settings, and this happened. It threw me out of the game, completely just booted me out of it, and the overheating error. In fact, the screen was flickering almost, and it just became unresponsive. This is not good at all. So if you intend to play very demanding games, you are going to have to lower settings to stop it from getting too hot. Now, it is getting up to about 50 degrees Celsius, and the liquid cooling 3.0, I don't know if it's doing a job here. It's good enough, well, not good enough for a demanding game like Genshin Impact. Obviously, with this happening, I don't think that's acceptable. Over to the cameras now here with the POCO F4 GT. So we only get 1080p with a front-facing camera, no 4K. It does have electronic image stabilization. The audio bitrate is disappointing, so it's around 96 kilobits per second, up to sometimes about 103. You do get quite a close crop, so my arm fully extended out is about here now. And the electronic image stabilization, just testing it out, does seem to work reasonably well, but come on, Xiaomi. Bring us 4K with front-facing cameras for vlog footage. Let's move over to the rear cameras, which can at least shoot 4K. So we do have 4K 30, 4K 60, no 8K with this main 64 IMX686 sensor. No optical image stabilization, so it's all electronic here with it. Stability does look reasonably good. Now if I pull back here in the camera mode, it won't go over to the ultra wide because the ultra wide can only shoot 1080p, that 8 megapixel sensor. It really should be a 13 megapixel sensor with it. Stability, as just mentioned, is looking very good, and this overall 4K image quality I don't find is too bad at all. So straight away you notice the difference here, that this camera does not look as good as the main 64 megapixel sensor. Only 8 megapixels. It looks washed out, it's lacking detail, and to me it's about 900p upscaled to 1080p. It just really is lacking in detail here. Look at the edges there of the sea with the reflection, not so good. So the electronic image stabilization, however, with this 8 megapixel sensor is reasonably good, but it's certainly the weaker cameras of all the POCO F4 GT's cameras. So then to quickly recap here, the things I like about this phone. Gaming triggers, very good build quality. Flat AMOLED screen that's bright, very responsive, fast 120 Hz. And we do have a reasonably good main camera. It's not bad, the Sony IMX686. Now it doesn't have any optical image stabilization, so for night shots it could be a little bit of blurriness that comes into there, but it wasn't that bad from the samples I've seen. The ultra wide is certainly not a strength of the camera setup, and a 2 megapixel macro camera that you're probably actually never going to use, but hey, it's there just to say that they've got a macro camera. Now those gaming triggers, they are quite nice, very good hardware with them, and they definitely do add to the gaming experience, especially when you're playing titles like PUBG, Call of Duty. I like the quad loudspeakers on this. So what are the things I don't like about it? Well, first and foremost really is it overheated on me. So 38 minutes into playing Genshin Impact, boom, crashed, booted me out of the game. It didn't crash, it just booted me out of the game through that overheating message, and that's not what you want to see at all on a phone. So the Snapdragon 8, in my experience now, the 8 Gen 1 that I reviewed quite a few phones with now, it really comes down to it being a very hot chipset. So it either needs to be fan cooled, as I've seen in some other gaming phones, to maintain consistent high performance, or it needs to be throttled quite a bit. So I can see that Xiaomi's going to come out with a fix for this. So it won't happen, you won't get booted out of games, but they will need to throttle down the performance to control the thermals to stop it from overheating, or simply increase that actual trip point, the skin temperature sensor they call it normally. So that's where the battery is on the back there. Instead of it triggering it at 50 degrees or 48 degrees, they're going to end up putting that up a little bit higher. So push it, the thermal, so it gets quite warm in gaming. So that is an area that I'm sure they're going to fix, but it's not good at all to see. The others are minor, so there's no video out from the Type-C port, we don't have micro SD card support, and no 3.5mm headphone jack. Besides those things, it is a very good phone, but if you are a POCO F3 owner, should you actually upgrade? Well, I would say no, unless you game a lot and you want the gaming triggers. I would stick with the POCO F3. It's still a fantastic phone. It's got a really good price tag now, a lot cheaper than what this is. Pricing for the F4 GT, unfortunately, at the time of me recording this video, it's all under embargo. We don't know until the actual launch event, when I need to have this video ready, of course, for that. So thank you so much for watching my full review of the POCO F4 GT.